If you see Corbyn come on the TV, I mean, I use the word hate. Do you hate him? That's a yes. So, do you want to start with Corbyn questions or countdown questions? Which would you prefer?
Don't mind, whatever you want to do.
Okay. What's the longest word you can get from Jeremycorbyn?
Oh, God. I'll have to see it written down.
Do you have to see them written down, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
There's two 8-letter words.
Can I have a look?
You won't be able to read my handwriting. Absolutely impossible.
Where? Is that English? They haven't got a pen and paper.
Ceremony
Right.
and cremorne.
And what?
Cremorne.
Okay, what does that mean?
It's an obsolete slang word for penis. Yeah.
Perfect.
What I want to know is whether your word person, Susie,
Yeah.
has the same anagram solver as I used.
She doesn't use an anagram solver. We
Seriously?
don't use anything like
Seriously?
that on Countdown. It's just brain power. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, we use a computer. Well, Susie uses a computer for the dictionary because the OED is online now,
Yeah.
and it changes all the time. And that way, it's updated and it's blah 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 blah. But with the anagrams and with the maths, we don't use any solvers.
That's impressive. Because I didn't even know the word cremorne existed
I've
until
never
I
heard
looked
of
in
it.
the
No, they're
anagram
amazing. I mean,
solver.
Susie's done it 27 years, so she's good.
But she can't know every word in the language.
She doesn't know any word that remotely has a rude connotation, or if it does, she won't know that side of it.
Okay.
She's absolute blind spot. She knows everything else. It's amazing.
Do you know the longest word you can get out of Rachel Riley?
No, go on then.
8 letters. Cheerily.
Cheer, that's nice. That's
Yeah.
better than penis.
Better than obsolete slang word for penis.
I like that.
So first of all, how political are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Middle. I mean, I before this, I knew next to nothing. I knew that what everybody else knew from the papers. I've got a lot more political in recent years with Trump getting in and with Brexit, and with feeling like you can't just rely on the politicians to get on with it. Before that, I felt like one side will get in, they'll be there for however many years, people get fed up with them, they'll vote the next lot in, and it will just rotate. Each one will balls it up in their own unique way. No one will always be happy by the nature of you if you're red or blue, and that's how it works. And then in recent years, I've seen it's gone different. It's different. It's a different time. Things that you would expect politicians to, you expect them to say certain things on the side of racism is bad, Ku Klux Klan is bad.
Who do you see of all the things you mentioned there? So Trump, bad thing?
Yeah,
Brexit?
bad thing.
And the anti-Semitism stuff that's kind of got you into this space, where does that figure on Trump, Brexit, anti-Semitism?
I mean, a lot of it's combined, but the anti-Semitism thing has got me most motivated because it's not being talked about as much as Trump is awful by all one side in America. Brexit has divided the nation. Whether you're Remain or pro-Brexit, you hate the state that everything's in at the moment. But anti-Semitism, it's still not got, in my opinion, the platform that it should have had. And even in recent weeks, it's become more mainstream, and I'm brilliant that I've been able to shine some light on it. But until then, it was so quiet. And when I was seeing what was happening, the levels of it, I'm still astounded every single day when I find something else out.
But is that because you're seeing it because you've made yourself a target, or because maybe you haven't thought about it as much before?
Yeah, but I'm kind of mainstream, but I'm interested in things. I feel I'm a liberal person. I help charities. I want to do things, and I just wasn't hearing about it until March and the protests last year. And even as you go deeper down the rabbit hole, there are still huge parts of the story, like so many one tentacle of this story that could bring down a regular party, a regular politician in normal times, but this isn't normal times.
And you're talking about Labour.
I'm talking about Labour, yeah.
Have you uncovered any anti-Semitism amongst more right-wing people? The far right, for example.
You get a few of them contacting me because I do look if someone sends me an awful message and I think people should see this because this is shocking. You look on the timeline. It's really, really easy. I've had maybe 2 or 3 times that I've seen something awful and looked on their timeline and they're just a horrible person and they're just.
And what's the worst thing anybody said?
I've had a lot that I'm an anti-Semite.
You're an anti-Semite.
I'm an anti-Semite. That's regular. I'm an anti-Semite. They're calling people paedophiles. A lot of people are paedophiles. Absolutely baseless. I'm a bully. Someone sent me a picture, and that one was just a troll, horrible troll, of children in striped pyjamas at Auschwitz, or I don't know if it was Auschwitz actually. Children in striped pyjamas at a concentration camp.
Yeah.
And I looked to see why they were sending this, because it could be someone sympathetic, and it was just a disgusting troll.
Where do you think it all comes from?
That's a good question.
I mean, have you thought about anti-Semitism before?
I didn't think it was around anymore. I thought it was in parts of the BNP or whatever. I'm from Essex, so that occasionally there'd be like 12 people on the roundabout with BNP signs, and you'd go around the roundabout, swear at them, and that's it. You know, it was small, it was fringe. They're loud, they're proud. Everyone hates them except them, and we know they don't infect society. But the last few years, I noticed it creeping, and I didn't know where it was coming from. And I noticed people couldn't say even the word Israel without having to immediately say, but I don't condone X, Y, Z that you don't necessarily know about. You have to automatically put it on the negative. But nobody ever.
Would you define yourself as pro-Israel?
Before this, I had the notion that it's a good thing that Israel. All I knew really is it's a good thing that Israel exists, because a lot of people have wanted to kill Jews over many years, and they've got somewhere where they're not going to be killed. But there are also people that want to drive Israel into the sea. That was my basic understanding, and I'm well aware that my upbringing has made me not think Israel is evil. And I've had to do a lot of soul searching, because suddenly when so many people are telling you that they're evil and demonic and et cetera, it's like, have I missed something? And I've really tried to look at it.
How Jewish are you?
I'm atheist. I'm a Man United fan. I always say my mum's Jewish, my dad's Man United, and I'm proud of my heritage, but I don't believe in God. I wasn't brought up in a Jewish community. You know, obviously my mum's side are Jewish, and we'd have the spreads when we get the family over, but nobody's religious.
Your mum's not got faith either, real faith either. My
mum will not in terms of the religious side. She'll go to shul to do charity quizzes, and she's always been a charity fundraiser, so that's part of it as well. She'll do things for the shul, she'll do things for Jewish community, she'll do things for animal charities, PTA, everything.
Right.
But I've been to shul. We used to go once a year for Yom Kippur for an hour for prayers for the dead.
Right.
So
has this made you feel more Jewish, or is that sort of part of your life stayed the same?
This year I felt more Jewish in that it was the first time I saw my kind of Jew represented anywhere, and it was.
What do you mean by your kind of Jew?
My kind of
atheist.
Jew. An atheist Jew being represented as a member of a Jewish community. So whenever you'd see documentaries or things about Jews, that you'd see Hasidic Jews or Orthodox Jews, and there was a programme called We Are British Jews.
Yeah, I saw that.
I thought it was brilliant, and I came across it because I saw on Twitter that there's this programme called We Are British Jews, and it's received a ton of anti-Semitism. And when I watched it, it had all representations of Jews, religious, non-religious, pro-Israel, massively pro-Israel,
Some of them
everything.
changing their minds as they went.
Absolutely, and I think that, everything around Israel, Palestine, there's just so much propaganda. There's so much of it you can take with a pinch of salt, or it's not even worth reading. So to actually see myself fitting in with a group of Jews, it's like,
so some good has come of this.
In the same way that people, a Holocaust memorial event, they say I wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Hitler because my parents met at a concentration camp. Yes, like Margaret Hodge says, Jeremy Corbyn's made me a Jew in that sense. And I've met some lovely people, I've met some brilliant people, Jews and non-Jews, people just standing up and fighting or being heard.
How did you make the first... What drove you to say the first thing that you said about this?
I was noticing more and more in the press, in mainstream press, that whenever you hear about Jews, it was always they're either moaning, smearing, being victims. It was all negative. And I was on the way to Countdown, and Susie Dent did the Origin of Word story about Breadline, which is about Jewish baker, immigrant. He decided to feed the poor, feed the homeless. That's like what his Jewishness or whatever it was for him. And I posted that, and I wrote, what a lovely story about Breadline, bloody Jews again. As in, bloody Jews again, feeding the homeless, and people...
Irony doesn't work on Twitter.
I wasn't trying to be ironic. I was just trying to make people read it, because I posted the actual story.
Yeah.
And if I just wrote, here's a nice story about Jews, no one would look at it, because you know what Twitter's like. So I wanted to be like, I'm not going to spoon feed this to you. Please have a look. It's a nice story.
Yeah.
But they didn't read it. They called me anti-Semite. That's fine. And then on the way home from that trip, I saw there was the bus stops with Israel is a racist endeavour.
Yeah.
And so I posted about that, because it was just like, what is happening? This is in London. People think this is normal. Without a big understanding of this, originally I just thought this guy just calls Hamas his friends and Hezbollah his friends, but he's still in power? How does that? And it normalises it. And you think, well, that sounds awful, but if he's still on the BBC and he's still getting votes, and there are still young people going, oh, Jeremy Corbyn, then there must be something more to this. And, okay, well, he said he has to talk to people he doesn't like.
But it sounds like you sort of drifted into it rather than sort of, right.
I've absolutely drifted into it. That what happened when I originally posted is you get such a reaction, a disproportionate reaction, and you see the anti-Semitism. And in the responses, in the level of anger, vitriol.
But somebody who calls you an anti-Semite.
That was anything to do with Corbyn.
So at the start, though, when they did, that's presumably because they didn't know you were Jewish.
That's because people don't understand what anti-Semitism is. They don't research anything. They don't click on a link. They just see the word Jew. Some people think the word Jew is offensive, which it can be if you use it in the wrong way. But just the word Jew is not offensive. It's just a word,
Yeah.
People don't understand things.
But you do the first post, then you do the poster.
Yeah.
But then you then very quickly you're at Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, the poster was around the same time as the Labour deciding not to take up the international the
HRA.
Thank you. Definition, which nobody had ever heard of until they decided not to take it up. But because they had such a big problem with anti-Semitism already, it's like each little thing is just another.
And what sort of feedback have you had from Labour people?
From people trying to fight this, I've had incredible feedback, support. They just feel lost and alone and don't know what to do with this. From Labour, from the hierarchy, I've either had nothing or I've seen them follow people who are spreading vicious lies about me and other campaigners who are trying to stop anti-Semitism. And that's all they're doing. And I've seen really, really underhand methods of promoting particular accounts who, on the one hand, smear and lie and are disgusting, and on the other hand are saying something lovely, and the hierarchy will promote the lovely tweets to push people towards these accounts. And you can see exactly what they're doing.
But if you see Jeremy Corbyn on the television saying he is not anti-Semitic, there's nothing in you that will buy that.
No. I mean, to be honest, I think it's kind of a pointless argument. I couldn't give a monkeys if he's anti-Semitic or not himself, because the environment he supports, the environment he's encouraging, the stuff that people are doing in his name is vile. So whether or not he says he's an anti-Semite or not, he's allowing this to happen. He's condoning it. He's, got people, his top people adding to the idea that it's a smear. So he's helping it grow. So I couldn't care less if he's got friends that are Jewish or if he doesn't think he's an anti-Semite. It means nothing to me, because he's fostering an environment that's really hostile to Jews, and not just.
But when you're sort of sitting there thinking, well, the leader of the Labour Party, he wants to be the Prime Minister. Why would he do that?
Well, you can look back over his record for 20, 30 years, and at first with this, I thought it was misplaced anger from empathy to the Palestinian cause. And the deeper you go, the more you look. There's research, there's articles he's written for various magazines that have suddenly been deleted or whatever. I think it's more anti-Semitism driving the I think it's anti-Semitism driving the obsession with Israel, and the Palestinian cause happens to help that, because he doesn't seem to help the Palestinian cause or care about it when it's in Syria or when it's in other Middle Eastern countries. He's very selective about when he decides to choose human rights to support, which fit his kind of world view or ideology. And I didn't know anything about this before, and I've had to listen to experts. You know, I'm not making this up by myself. I'm listening to people like Dr. Dave Rich, David Hirsch, Nick Cohen. You know, there's firm research on this. It's indisputable, and the fact that people will now, you know, obviously the Twitter people will see a fact and just disregard it and carry on with their Holocaust denial.
So when you see all the accusations of anti-Semitism against individual members of the Labour Party, which have or have not been dealt with, you think that's a leadership cultural thing?
Absolutely. Even in the disciplinary process, there's no transparency at all. I have no idea what's happening.
Anything, you know, because when we were in charge, New Labour, you know, I think we did have a pretty good relationship with the Jewish community. Do you think is there anything the Labour Party could do now to, maybe not you, but, well, actually, is there anything Labour could do to win you back?
This Labour?
Yeah.
No. This Labour, no. Their treatment of, I mean, people like Luciana Berger and Ruth Smith and Ian Austin and Margaret Hodge and John, anyone that speaks up against this, they're trying to actively discipline them. And that these are the MPs, this is never mind the CLPs and the individual stories. I don't think they care. I genuinely think they don't care.
Where on the political spectrum, where are you? Left, right?
Middle. I'm not red or blue. I consider myself a liberal. When I watch American politics, I'll bow down to the Obamas.
If there was an election tomorrow, what would you vote?
If there was an election tomorrow, I'd vote for Conservatives. In a heartbeat, because I would vote anyone that would stop them getting in power. I mean, the Greens, the Greens are no better.
Liberal Democrat?
Nothing wrong with the Liberal Democrats, but they're not going to get into power.
So but is there anything the Conservatives do? So to you, is there anything the Conservatives do that make you feel... So like for me, I can get very angry about anti-Semitism, but I can get very, very angry about what Theresa May is doing on Brexit. I can get very angry about people sleeping in the streets. I can get very angry about universal credit.
So can I, of course. But I don't.
So you would say that.
I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's going to save any of those things. I think the last election he promised everything without a plan to how to achieve them. So even though, you know, I don't see the logic in that. I hate homelessness or I don't see the logic in that. I'm in the middle. I think in both parties there are great people, and in both parties there are horrendous people. I don't think I think the Labour Party's got their priorities absolutely upside down at the moment. I don't think they represent the normal Labour Party in the slightest. I think the things that you read.
Have you ever voted Labour?
I don't want to talk about who I voted particularly, because that would just be used against me. I mean, at the moment I'm called a Tory everything under the sun. And
but you're saying you'd vote Tory because you hate Labour, because you hate Corbyn?
At the moment, yeah. Previously, I've voted 3 different parties.
Okay.
And in the future, I'm not red or blue. I think I can, even with this especially, tribalism is appalling. It's the worst. It just makes you apologise for all kinds of hideous things, and you don't see the things that are against your value system because it's coming from. So if you see Corbyn
come on the TV, I mean, I use the word hate. Do you hate him? That's a yes.
Yeah, I think it's not. I think it's not all his fault. There's a lot of people around him, and it's the same thing. The same thing with Brexit. It's easy to blame one person for something, and I don't blame him for causing anti-Semitism, for being the sole provider of this, anything like that. But the buck has to stop somewhere. They're recruiting from places full of anti-Semites, and you're actively recruiting Labour members from Facebook groups that take you onto neo-Nazi websites. You're doing this consciously. because their only policy seems to be get into power. I don't think they stand for a lot of things.
That's why I say it's odd that if their strategy is to try and get into power, that they would deliberately seek to alienate, a group of people that is pretty significant within our politics and our culture. Seems a very odd thing to do.
It's ideology. It's ideology over anything. It's why, we've got a Prime Minister who was Remain having to push Brexit, and we've got Jeremy Corbyn, who's pro-Brexit, having to keep his mouth shut vaguely and have all options open, which means he hasn't got a policy. It's ideology. It's why he doesn't come out and criticise Russia when they poison people in our country, or when Assad, gasses his own people. You have significant voices in the Labour movement saying that, they watered down these chemicals in public. It's absolutely upside down logic. It's black is white, up is down, and.
So has it made you more political? Would you ever?
Yeah, it's made me much more political. I didn't know who anyone. There's hundreds, thousands of people working for government. I could name a few before this, and now, especially through Labour, I've met some brilliant people, because the Labour people are the people that care about their party that much, and they're the people that have contacted me are fantastic, and they're really trying to do something. And when you meet politicians from wherever it is, actual real people, they're great, and they want to help their country, they want to help their people, but then all you see in the newspapers or on the news is the Borises or the characters, the Jacob Rees-Mogg, that nobody relates to, but they're good tabloid headlines. So there's a definite
have you ever thought about going into politics?
No.
And you'd never do that?
I've never met Jacob Rees-Mogg.
But would you ever think of going into politics?
I don't think you need to go into politics to make a difference and to affect politics.
No, that's true.
A few months ago, I did an event. There was like a charity community event in Dagenham and Redbridge, and it was for the local kids all coming together to think of ideas how they can get more women into politics. So it was like from 5 to 18. And that was like a community event, boys and girls coming together with these ideas. And there were two, it's a Labour area, so there's Princess Bright, 22-year-old, youngest councillor in the country, another lady, I can't remember her name, but 27 years old, 4 children, councillor. They got into politics, some people around that area, to get rid of the BNP, which is great, but not everyone's going to go into politics. And those kids that are thinking of ideas of how to get their community involved and improve their schools, and that is politics. That's what it's all about.
So would you say what you've been doing in relation to anti-Semitism, that's a way of doing politics?
Yeah, I mean, politics is supposed to be about making your society, making your community better.
Yeah, but if people don't become MPs, you see with the Brexit now, ultimately the MPs are going to decide this.
But MPs have to placate their people they're going to vote for them. So they have to toe the party line. They have to play the game in a certain way. I don't have to play the game. I can just say what I think. I'm not worried if anyone's going to vote for me or not. I just see it, call it.
Right.
And I think that's more useful.
But it's interesting, you've never correct me if I'm wrong, but up until this, even though you've been around for a while and done Countdown for a while and been on the telly for a while, I've never seen you express a political view before.
I've done a couple of tweets about Brexit.
Right.
When I post "Don't do Holocaust denial" and you get called a Tory, or I've seen someone else who's very, very, very left, was a member of Labour against the witch hunt, and now he's calling out anti-Semitism. He's been called a paedophile, but literally in the same comment where they're calling him a paedophile, they say he's a Tory or he's being paid by Israel, and that's the more important thing than potentially being a paedophile. All of it's made up, but the priorities are just wrong. So when people say you're a Tory, which is the worst thing you could possibly ever be, whereas most of the country voted Tory, that's just alienating half the country. And on either side, I just think it's... my first instinct with all of this was like, I'll put a positive story out there, because I'm naturally a positive person. I think people respond to positivity better. I think it's more useful. I don't want to just shout at something for nothing where it's pointless. I want to try and do something if I'm going to say something. And when people are shouting,
you mentioned social media a lot. Do you think this is in part a product of social media?
No.
Or do you think it's deeper than that?
I think it's deeper than that. I think it's just, I think there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, fake news, the first Jews to be chucked out of a country was in Britain in, 1270 because of the blood libel, which was a fake story that Jews killed children, which is still going around now. Yeah. Fake news isn't new. The same way the Holocaust wasn't a new thing, anti-Semitism wasn't new, it was just a more modern version, and the more more technology we have, the quicker these ideas, the quicker these things spread and the bigger they can become. So I think we're just seeing it a lot more clearly, a lot more easily with social media. And we normally stick in our little bubbles and we talk to our friends. Yeah. And then as soon as you mention Corbyn, you get a whole nother bubble jumping on board. And when
you're out there, say, we're just, in how much of on the social media side of things is kind of hate of you because of you taking on Corbyn, and how much is supported because people think you're standing up for something you believe?
I don't know, I'd probably say what I get is probably 50-50.
Okay.
And I think when people attack, other people join in and attack back, which I just
Whereas
can't
when
look
they defend,
at it anymore.
less so.
Sorry?
When people defend you, do other people join in, or do they?
Oh yeah, they just argue with each other, but it's just stressful to look at.
Why do you look?
I don't anymore.
Right.
I did because Twitter's my space to talk to fans, to help kids with maths homework, to talk about Man United, to post cat pictures. It's social media, the only way anyone uses it. It was basically my version of LinkedIn for a telly person. Right. It's my way. I've met friends. I've had jobs. I've helped charities. Like loads of connections through Twitter that I've I don't have at the moment because I can't look at it.
Right.
But I think something. I love Bill Maher in the States. I think he's liberal, but on but sensible.
Yeah.
And someone that came on his programme said something about in the States, if you're slightly right of centre, you'll post something about politics 60% of the time on your Facebook or whatever. But if you're slightly left, it's only 5% of the time. And I see myself in American politics left. And that just made me realise that it's the silent majority in the middle, the people who don't want to offend people, the people who have nuanced opinions or might not know the whole story, won't say anything. So that only leaves the void for people who don't care if they're wrong, don't care if they offend, don't care about the facts, talking. And I wanted to add something in the middle.
But if you were, I know this is hard to imagine, but imagine that this anti-Semitism issue in the Labour Party did not exist, just wasn't there, never had been, it's gone.
Yeah.
Is it the only thing that's sort of stopping you from maybe even considering Labour?
From considering?
If it didn't exist, if anti-Semitism wasn't there, might you vote Labour?
It depends who the leader was. If it was a good leader, yeah, absolutely. If it would have been David McBand, from a superficial level, I thought he seemed great.
Yeah.
It is about character at the end of the day, and you have to go for who you trust, who you like the sound of. And even before I knew too much about all of this, the previous election before this most recent one, I just obviously there were things about being friends with terrorists that doesn't sit well, but just promising everything, just we can do this, like everybody wants all of those things. That's fantastic, but how are you going to achieve them? How are you going to pay for them? Let's be realistic. I'm a pragmatist. I'm a mathematician. It just didn't feel right.
And you mentioned Brexit right at the top. So what's your? Bear in mind you're talking to a complete fanatic here. What's your big beef about Brexit?
I thought it was. I think in retrospect, obviously it was a stupid question to ask because it didn't have an answer. The best analogy I've seen for it is exit, as in eggs, as in we've got a big EU cake and I want my eggs back. Well, they're not eggs anymore. They've been cooked. They've been changed. They've been intertwined with massive systems for 40 years or whatever. So just taking them out, that doesn't mean anything. And just saying something, you want something, doesn't mean it can happen. So
people can leave organisations and so...
But the whole... I think,
so what do you want to...
For me, I think if they'd have done Remain, Leave, 2 fingers up to the establishment politicians, we could have all just gone 2 fingers up, thrown some eggs at some whatever. We could have, that's what people were voting for, just to put their fingers up a lot of the time. But there was no one thing that Leave represented. So to try and say that Leave everyone agrees is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I voted Remain at the time. I mean, there wasn't too much information. It was a lot louder from the Leave because they don't care, from my opinion, they didn't care if they were right or wrong, whatever. And I voted Remain because I didn't think we had a better option. I didn't think it was a perfect system by any means. I still don't. But I think you just have to go with what's the best option. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's in life with anything.
Yeah.
Is that better than what we've got?
Yeah.
Or shall we, is it better? That's the only question you have to ask.
So what do you want to see happen on Brexit now?
I don't know. The country's
People's
divided.
vote. People's vote.
If you can tell me how that will help, great. Because at the moment, the country is so divided and it benefits. Well, it doesn't benefit the UK, it benefits people who want to see the EU broken up, people who want anarchy and the country infighting rather than looking out and seeing what everybody else is doing. And if we have another vote, first of all, I'd love to know what the question's going to be. And second of all, if it's not 60-40 or something, or that much, if it's still split down the middle, everyone's just going to hate each other still. So I don't know.
No, I think I honestly do think if we did get another vote and Remain was on the ballot paper against a version of Brexit, a defined version of Brexit, because that's what we never had, I think we could win quite big. Well, and I think the country could come back together. And the country's not going to come together around what we've got now.
Well, I would support. I'd love a people's vote. I mean, the idea that this is democracy and we can't change our mind is, again, ridiculous, because that's why we have elections every few years to see if we've changed our mind. That the years that 100 years of suffrage was last year, and women had to be tortured, to try and get the vote, and that didn't even work. It was the war came, and other reasons meant that women got the vote, but even women were objecting to women being able to vote.
For sure.
So there's so many things that we have another go at, and we weren't, because we didn't know what the question was originally. Are you a
feminist?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, and it's my version of feminism is equality. That's what I see feminism.
And do you think we're an equal society on men-women issue?
I think we're trying. I think there's still a lot of stereotypes. I mean, before anti-Semitism, the thing I was most vocal about is getting girls into maths, science, technology, engineering, and there's a lot of stereotypes that stop women being able to do these things or seeing themselves in certain roles, and the glass ceiling, and why women don't go for the top jobs to do with psychology, and that really interests me. And a lot of it's subliminal, inherent in both men and women. The way we treat babies, I'm interested in this kind of thing. And
do you still think there's a kind of gender divide on maths?
There is in the way people are perceived. It's all in perception. So
if you say mathematician, people think man.
That's a good way that they test children to see their views. Ask them to draw a scientist. Ask them to draw. I mean, there was that little girl that said she wanted to be a boy so she could be a firefighter. And it's just in there. And there was a brilliant program on the BBC called No More Girls and Boys, where they cut all the gender stuff out in a school and saw the difference in the behaviour and the way they act, and took all the pink packaging off the girls' toys and the blue off the boys, and gave the boys, a little doll that they could sew buttons on, and gave the girls Lego or whatever it was.
But you've come dressed with a bit of pink.
What's wrong with that?
And you took more time over your makeup than I did.
There's nothing wrong with that. You can still be a feminist and wear pink. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yeah, I have, definitely, yeah. So what's something I read that when you did a real shift of gear now to Strictly, you said that you got really bad stage fright.
Yeah.
And you had to get treatment for that.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So I had CBT. It was one of the best things I've ever done, and that was the first time I'd had any kind of, whatever you call it, therapy. And it was the first time I kind of thought about the way I think and realised that you can change the way you think. So I was loving the training. I'd never done any dancing before, etc., etc. Been on TV for 5 years at that point, fine. As soon as the music came on the Strictly dance floor, my mind would just go completely foggy, and I'd wake up in like 2.5 minutes or whatever it was later.
Was it panic attack? Was it a form of panic?
It wasn't panic. It was just fight or flight. Like excitement is the same thing as fear. So the adrenaline goes. You stop breathing. Your brain goes funny, and you're just a bit fuzzy. So it was just about being more aware. And I realised from...
And you'd never had that with
never had that before.
TV?
No. But I did realise from that I'm a perfectionist. And I didn't think I was, because I didn't think everything should be perfect. But what I was doing was, whenever I did anything, I'd look afterwards and see all the negatives, all the little things that went wrong, and focus on those. But I would never think, before I did anything, what would be a positive outcome? What am I hoping to achieve from this?
Right.
And then be pleased when I did it. So that taught me, before you do something, think about what you're trying to achieve from it. It doesn't have to be perfect if you're getting 80% or...
But when you were doing the CBT, did you try to establish whether there was anything kind of deeper going on that you should be worried about?
Like what?
I don't know. There was some kind of mental health issue that you hadn't thought about that was being triggered by that particular
No, it didn't
set
come
of
up. It was like rapid behavioural therapy, so it was like 2-3 hour sessions.
Right.
And that was...
But it helped?
It was brilliant.
So give me an example of something where you found a way of thinking differently.
Well, before I give a speech or do something on telly, because I'd never been on TV before. I wasn't used to public speaking, performing, anything like that. So if I'd stumble over words, afterwards I'd think, I messed that up, or I could have done that better. But before I do something like that now, you just think, well, what are the audience expecting to see from me? What, from their point of view, are they seeing? Because all the little things that I feel and I see, they don't see. And if
They might do, though.
They might do, but who cares?
So you're basically dialing down on the anxiety about something.
It's it's more about, so perfectionists as well, they blame themselves when anything goes wrong, but when anything goes right, they'll put it down to external forces.
Right.
So it's just luck, it's not real. So if I got an 8 at Strictly, that was my aim, to get 1 8.
Did you?
I got 2 on my last one, and then I was
done.
out. But before that, if I got a good mark, it's not real. It's just them doing it for whatever reason. If I got a bad mark, I'd own it.
Right.
So you can just realise that you're doing that and change the way you think about things.
Are you basically an optimist or a pessimist then?
I think, good question. Somewhere in the middle.
Right.
I think I'm an optimist. I'll take chances and I'll go for it.
And when you did the Strictly thing, so I've got to be honest, I'm not a big fan of Strictly. Never watched it. Good. She said, nor am I. Is that because you didn't win it?
No, I loved it when I was on it, but
Right.
my boyfriend's a Strictly dancer, so I'm a Strictly widow every year.
I know, but let me ask you about that.
Okay.
For that to go well, right?
For what to go well?
Well, something obviously went on between you. Something clicked. Otherwise, you wouldn't be together now.
Yeah.
Right. To dance well.
Yeah.
Does that feeling have to be there?
No.
You sure?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course not. It's just...
So you don't worry he's going to have that feeling with somebody else?
No, he's gorgeous. He's amazing.
He might be gorgeous, but you know.
No, he's just... The great thing, people ask that question, but...
Sorry, is that a really boring question? You've been asked 1,000 times.
Well, it's the tabloid question, isn't it? Like, are you
You're calling me
worried
tabloid?
I'm not
just you're
calling it
trying to do the
tabloid. No, because you're not interested in Strictly. You're just asking a question,
No,
which
but
is
it's
why I'm not
interesting,
answering it.
But do the best ones not have to have something bit beyond technical ability to dance?
No.
They must do.
But this is
Like ballet
where people talk about, why aren't you having gay ballroom couples? It's like, well, you can be gay and dance with a woman, or it doesn't matter. It is about the art. It's physical. They're so muscular
Yes,
and
I know
sporty.
it's physical, but it's also creative.
Yeah.
So is there not... I just assume that if there's a bit of a zing between the couple, they're going to dance better.
No,
No?
honestly, nothing to do. I mean, with what was interesting, it was the first time I had to kind of surrender in a way and listen to someone else.
Right.
So I'm quite independent and been brought up that way.
You
and...
nearly said controlling.
No, I didn't say controlling. I don't know what I was going to say.
You nearly did. I could tell.
Something. But I just had to listen to someone else. And when I can't dance and I'm standing there going, and just, looking like a prat, that you feel like the least sexy person in the world, because you're vulnerable and you're having to listen to someone else.
You're giving yourself over to this guy.
Yeah.
That's what happened. That's what happened.
No, he's...
So when was the moment when you thought this is more than a dance relationship?
Not for a long time, because I was married when I did Strictly.
Well, these things happen.
Yeah. But no, I mean, you're just focused. You're literally just focused on the dance. You've got from Sunday to Saturday to learn a brand new dance. And at that time, I was doing Countdown and the Gadget Show. So I was living in Essex. I was filming in Birmingham and in Salford.
Stressed.
And then filming Strictly in Boreham Wood with a bit of It Takes Two in London. So I was getting 3 hours sleep a night, trying to fit in all these things. And all you want to do at that time is the dancing, because you know you've got to do this thing in a few days, and you're doing.
And you don't think the Strictly contributed to the breakup of the marriage?
No, I've talked about this vaguely. I'm still friends with my ex-husband. He's great. He's a brilliant guy. We were together since I was 19, and it wasn't right. And it what Strictly did was gave me distance, because I was away from home in Birmingham, Salford, Boreham Wood. And it was the emotional distance that I needed to break away. And it's, he's a lovely guy, but
then this Russian dancer came along.
It
made the truth.
I made the truth. I love my Russian dancer.
What does he think of Putin?
He doesn't directly think about anything about Putin, but it's interesting because he was brought up in Soviet Russia. And his friends brought up in Soviet Russia. They have a completely different outlook on things than I do as a Western person. Some of his friends, and I've talked about this, who I love, they're brilliant, think that the Earth is flat. So, and when this
You mean literally?
Literally. And this first came up a few years ago when we were on holiday, and I had a couple of drinks. And I just interviewed Tim Peake. And
who knows it's not?
Yeah. And I was like, sorry, what? There are people that believe this? And you're one of them? What? And I didn't understand what it was in me that really offended me about all this rubbish. And it obviously doesn't make any sense. But it's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And because in Russia they were fed truth and lies at the same time, so you can't tell what's true. And then they move to America and they get a completely different viewpoint on the world, and they don't trust anyone, they don't trust anything. So when someone says, oh, why have you not been told about this? That clicks as making sense, like so they're trying to cover something up, maybe the Earth is flat. But
is your guy, I mean, he's like 100% Russian, he feels Russian?
Well, he moved to America just before 9/11, so it was about 2000.
Okay, yeah.
And he said as soon as he got to America, he fit in there. He loved America. He's got an American passport.
Okay, so he's kind of.
So he's got his eyes open in some ways.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll listen to strange views at other times.
Now listen, back to Countdown. Why did Jeff Stelling not work out?
I
keep trying to get this lot to get him to do Jeff Stelling. I think he'd be good for GQ.
Jeff's brilliant. I absolutely love Jeff.
I'll make a note.
Really?
He's
they've already
gorgeous.
said no.
I think it was the time when Richard Keys and Andy Gray got fired, and Jeff was having to be up and down the country and in Europe and do the Countdown thing, and it was
because most people who do Countdown have sort of they kind of do it forever.
Well, no. Well, I think Richard Whiteley obviously did it until he died. So
he was 20 odd years.
20 odd years.
Carol Vorderman 20 odd years.
26 years, I think. But there were the two Deses as well, Des Lynam and Des O'Connor, who I think were 1 year and maybe
Quite
2
brief.
or 3.
Yeah.
And I've just done 10.
And do you want to do 30?
I'd love to. I love
Seriously?
it. I love it.
Seriously?
I love it. I'm a maths geek. I used to watch it as a kid. I used to
But
play
there
against
must be
my
other
brother.
ways of doing maths. You could, build a new space module or something.
I think I'm too old for that.
No.
Those days are gone.
I mean, but you're just doing the same thing every day.
But it's fun, and I get to do other things as well. It's something like 50 days a year filming.
50?
50, because we film in batches.
So how many sums is that?
Well, it's probably about 900. We're contracted for about 225 shows, so it's about 900 sums.
So how many sums a show do you do? How many sums a show?
4.
Right. What's the hardest one you've ever had? Or are they all the same?
Some of them are impossible. And so sometimes I'm such a loser, but I do get a rush sometimes when I know this one's going to be really good. So last time we were filming, I didn't get it in the 30 seconds. And the only time we use a computer is if I don't get it, they'll go, it's impossible. So I'm not sitting there for the rest of the show. And so we can tell the audience. But if it is possible, they won't tell me the solution. I'll just sit there. And
so when do you find out the solution?
You don't. If I don't get it, you don't find it out. You can cheat if you want to, but otherwise I'll take it home and I'll do it in my own time.
Right.
But there was one last week when my producer was like, Rach, this one's mental, there's only one solution. And I was like, just give me 10 seconds. And I got it. And it was like 3,295 divided by 5 to get the answer. And with things like that, I'm like, yeah, that was a good one.
All right, 172.
Yes.
What does that number say to you?
It's
I just want to know
divisible
if you
by...
have feelings about numbers.
It's 43 times 4. I do, especially 3-digit numbers, I have to factorise
What's your favourite number?
9 or 11.
9, is that football?
No,
Is that
9 is
gigs
just...
and-
9, 11's gigs.
Yeah. Who's your best 9?
No, it's not football.
Right.
It's just there's
I
like...
think it is. I think subconsciously, 9 and 11, they're very important numbers in football.
Well, not United 7. I'd say 7 if it was United.
Excellent Cantona.
Exactly, Ronaldo. Memphis. No, 9, there's good tricks with 9. So you can look at a number and tell instantly if it's divisible by 9 with the digits. So you can use Countdown to talk to kids about factors and the way numbers work and give them strategic thinking and logical thinking. It's a really good tool.
And is it true that, I mean, it's a bit of a caricature, that the bulk of the audience are kind of old people and students?
A lot of it. Yeah, I think we've got less of the students these days because it's on earlier. So it used to be on at 4.
Fewer.
Thank you. Good one. Fewer students.
Yeah.
Because we're on earlier. So the 8 out of 10 Cats version has brought it to a younger audience. And that's kind of universal. First of all, Susie and I were a bit worried, are we going to be offending our regular viewers? But they either watch it or they don't.
Right.
And it's not
But you could see yourself doing it in 20 years?
Yeah, if they'll have me.
And you think you'd love it still?
Yeah, I mean the team are great. It's a small team.
What about being a football commentator?
Not commentator. I
know you've done stuff, but what about? Do you think there'll ever be a kind of John Motson, a female John Motson, who's like not just part of the team, but number one?
I don't think it'll be me because that's not what I'm about. I'm a football fan and I do TV presenting, but that's not me. But there are plenty of women that can do that and are doing that.
Jackie Oatley.
Yeah, she's brilliant. Alex Scott, she's on Sky now.
She's pundit rather than commentator.
Yeah, but...
I think it's back to the boys-girls thing, right? Whether we're just so conditioned to hear a man. I'll be honest, I still find it strange when I hear a woman actually doing the commentary.
Yeah. Well, it's conditioning, and that's just something that over time...
Well, a lot of the male commentators are absolutely terrible.
A lot of them yes, exactly, they are. And a lot of them...
So why do you support Man United? If I needn't ask, given you come from Essex.
Because my dad's from Salford, so I had a baby grow before I was born.
Right,
Dad's been going since 1960.
Yeah.
So it's like, call me. You can call me. People say I'm not Jew. People say I'm not United. Whatever. It's the same thing for me. Like, I've got it from my parents.
Okay, fine, all right.
One of them is not going to get me murdered.
Mourinho in a word.
Sad. He just looks sad, doesn't he?
Never used to.
No.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in a word. Lucky against Burnley. Very, very lucky.
Spirit. He's just brought something back. He's rejuvenated. I had a little chat with him actually. I got to meet him after the Burnley game, and he stood for like 5-10 minutes having a chat. And he was my favourite player growing up.
Was he?
Yeah. At the Giggs is Mr. Man United, so he lasted with longevity. But at the time of them playing, Solskjaer, I just love him, the babyface assassin.
Yeah.
And I told him, and he managed to not look too creeped out. I supported Norway once in the Euros because of Solskjaer, and he's just rejuvenated the club.
Did he admit that they were really, really lucky against Burnley?
And he didn't say they were really lucky.
Mickey Phelan did.
Did he?
Yeah. To me, Phelan, Burnley fan.
But the thing about that game, as opposed to the others, was we had belief and we had urgency for the whole game. So the last however long you go to the game, and maybe they might wake up for the last 5 minutes, but this game, especially, I think that's the whole of the second half, people were trying.
Yeah, they're on it. They were on it. I'll give them that, but they were still very, very lucky.
They were.
So the sports stuff you've done MUTV.
Mm-hmm.
Would you not find a fancy doing something much bigger than that?
I did Sky Sports.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you were little thing. You weren't Jeff Stelling.
Well, Jeff Stelling's been doing live sport presentation for what, 20, 30 years?
Yeah, so why
50 years? How old's Jeff?
That's what I'm saying. But you want to just do sums forever.
You can do both. I didn't say I would just want to do sums. I would love to carry on doing sums.
But don't you think to really, really, really do something like Jeff does, you've got to just do that?
Yeah, if you really, really, really wanted to do it like Jeff does, but that's not me. I like having a laugh with things, especially Man United's my passion. And, you know, there has to be other teams so you've got them to play.
Did you get close to giving up on United in the Mourinho era?
No, I'm
really
not.
boring,
I'm not.
wasn't it?
It was up, you didn't know what you were going to get. Yeah. You really didn't know.
You did, you knew it was going to be boring.
I mean, you say that, but then there was the City game where we were 2-0 down and we won 3-2 out of nowhere and stopped them winning the lead that game. You can still never bet on football. And there still were good moments. I mean, the first half of this season were dire. And I've been with Pasha, I mean, we met just over 5 years ago when David Moyes was in charge. So he's not known us looking good. So this is kind of like, look, this is what my team's supposed to look like.
Is he a United fan?
He is now. He's a convert. He knew nothing before. It was like, here's a man called Messi. Here's a man called Sir Alex Ferguson. Okay. And now I get home, I've got home once and he's got the football on, he's making dinner and he's going, Phil Jones was appalling.
Yeah, that's fair bet.
Yeah, it's funny.
Good. Well, thank you for coming in. Lovely chat.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck.
Good luck to Burnley.